Houston, are you ready for the event?
Houston Station, almost ready for the event. And I'm ready for the event.
TG1, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Please call station for a voice check.
Hello, I read you loud and clear. How about you? Buongiorno. Sì, ti sento forte e chiaro. Buongiorno, benvenuta a bordo della stazione spaziale.
Benissimo. Allora, cominciamo con poche domande. Ecco, noi dal TG1 vorremmo sapere la passeggiata spaziale, l'emozione, ma anche la seconda passeggiata spaziale, il 16 luglio, era entrata acqua nel casco. Che cosa è successo?
Water came into the helmet. What happened?
Sì, due passeggiate, devo dire, molto diverse.
Very different.
Le attività extraveicolari sono chiaramente delle attività molto particolari che comportano del rischio. La prima
come with some risk. The first on July 9th went really well without any issue,
senza inconvenienti,
without any inconveniences.
Un'attività extraveicolare
Therefore,
da manuale.
it was very textbook. So we completed all our activities, and we even went beyond with some activities to start the second one right. However, the second one didn't go very well. I brought the helmet here with me to show you what happened on that day.
Questo è il mio casco, il casco che ho indossato durante...
Yeah, explain to us what happened. Yes, this is my helmet, I was saying. This is the helmet I was wearing during the spacewalk. On orbit, air to be able to circulate must be forced, so it must be ventilated constantly. From this hole here that you see underneath, maybe you can't see very well, but there's an entrance that brings the air from the vent loop into the helmet. The diffuser is this white part that you see inside the helmet. So air comes into this hole, and then through the diffuser is distributed throughout the helmet so that it can constantly change the air. So we think that some water from the cooling loop somehow went into the vent loop, and through this hole was transported throughout these diffusers behind the white part, and little by little started accumulating behind my head. Because obviously on orbit water doesn't flow, so it simply accumulated in a huge bubble that after a while I felt, also because its temperature was very low. The biggest problem was when, as you can see, the volume inside the helmet is not a lot, so when the volume increased so that it would cover my eyes, nose and ears, that was the worst moment of the whole activity. Your colleague, Chris Cassidy, said that the incident could have had some dire consequences. Were you afraid, and will you be going out for a third spacewalk?
Sono due domande diverse.
Well, those are two different questions. Let me answer the second one right away. Definitely, I hope to be able to have other extravehicular activities. Obviously, this is my dream and the dream of many astronauts, but at this time, we are busy with troubleshooting the spacesuit and the ones on the ground as well to see if it's a common problem. Once we have resolved this problem, then we will be thinking about other other spacewalks. At this point, it's still too early to be able to understand whether that's something that we can do during this increment or whether we need to wait till next time. As far as the emotions that I felt during those intense phases, it's very hard to describe because it's a lot of emotions all at once. Definitely, at a very basic level, there is fear, because I always say that fear is an instrument. All your instruments can be used for positive or negative. A scalpel in a surgeon's hand can be an instrument of life, but it can also be used to hurt people. So fear has the same value. You can utilize it to heighten your senses, to be able to think on your feet and react more quickly if it's used properly and if we're trained to do so. Fortunately, my training that I received on the ground and in many years in the Italian Air Force as a pilot and then a test pilot, that training was very useful to me because when I reacted to the emergency, I try to keep calm and to focus on what the possible resolutions were and how to be able to go back even without a lot of visibility. And I also try to think as fast as I could, if water had reached my mouth, how could I have eliminated it so that I didn't drown in the helmet?
Invece parlando un po' di quello che succede sulla stazione spaziale.
So talking about what happens on the International Space Station,
Di quello che succede sulla Terra.
do you have an idea from there of what's happening on Earth? What questions do you have for the Italians?
Io sono sempre in contatto con
I'm always in contact with the Earth. Fortunately, technology helps us on board of station, and we have internet on board the station, certainly not continuously.
Dovuto al fatto che noi
and also due to the fact that we're working for the majority of our day. But fortunately, we have the ability to connect and to be able to follow what's happening in Italy and in the world. Of course, I'm very interested in what's happening in Italy.
Un messaggio per gli italiani.
A message for the Italians.
Io agli italiani vorrei dire questo.
I would like to say this to the Italians, to continue to believe in our nation, to continue to believe in our country. It's a little country, but it's a great nation. There is a lot that we can still do and demonstrate to the world that we still have capabilities and that we still have the will to work and to come back. And this is the time to look to the future and research and invest into the future and our youth. So to invest in them, to look to the fields of expertise like engineering, science, physics. Look at these fields with anticipation and faith, so that with optimism we can come out of a moment of crisis that is not just Italian, but it's a worldwide crisis. So my message is just this: to have faith and to be optimistic.
Lei ha ricevuto qualcosa dall'Italia?
Have you received something from Italy with the latest spacecraft that came up, something that you had asked for? Or did you realize that there's something else that you wanted up there on station?
No, l'ultima navetta Progress che è arrivata,
last Progress spacecraft
è una navetta tipicamente con materiali
was a spacecraft containing
stazione,
materials for the station,
per noi astronauti.
Not a lot of items for us astronauts. What we received was a surprise. I don't know if it came from Italy. I don't believe so, but we did receive some fresh fruit and vegetable that here on station, it's an incredible luxury. It's an explosion of colors and scents that we didn't expect. But honestly, aside from my family and my daughters, I'm not really missed anything here on board.
L'ultima domanda. Lei
Last question.
Quotidianamente
Do you communicate daily with your family? And what did your mom tell you after your spacewalk? Yes, fortunately, once again, thanks to technology, I have the opportunity to utilize an internet phone to be able to communicate with my family. Daily, I call my wife and I speak with my daughters. When I came back from the second extravehicular activity, I immediately called my wife, who had already spoken with my mom. And I tried to tell them simply that everything went fine, that I was fine, which was true, without trying to minimize any of the events, but also without exaggerating them, because it never makes any sense to exaggerate. So simply telling them that there was a malfunction, that I was back and I was fine. And both my mom and my wife are very used to this kind of phone call after many years as a pilot.
Grazie, Luca.
Thank you, Luca.
Grazie a voi, a presto.
Thank you all. See you soon.
And in the second portion of the event, Luca, I would like to speak to you about the experiment you do on board Columbus. So, Luca, I understand you.
With pleasure. Let me put this aside and I'll. I'm ready for the question.
Okay, Luca, so I understand you'll be taking part in a really cool experiment that's called Energy with Mike Hopkins in September. Can you tell me a bit more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. The energy experiment that will start in September, both with me and Mike Hopkins as subject, is assessing the energy requirement for astronauts, especially with the view of a long-duration mission. What we're trying to discover here is, or to assess, is how much energy exactly does an astronaut need to go on a long-duration mission, for example, to the Moon or to Mars. And the idea is that if we can determine the exact quantity, then we can pack the exact amount of food required, and that would be an incredible advantage, both in terms of storage and in economical terms of how much money we would spend in order to send it. And that also equates to how big the spacecraft needs to be.
And so you're eating and drinking special things during this experiment. Can you tell a bit more about it?
That is correct. I will be eating a very specific diet that is contained in this container right here. So this is food that it's been packed already on the ground. It's very specific, and the scientists know exactly the energy content of each specific container. So when I eat this food, the scientists will know exactly how much energy my intake is, and then I'm going to be drinking a specific amount of water that will let the scientists know. It will let the scientists calculate how much of the energy I'm expending, and so they can create an equation where they have an intake and an outtake of energy, and thus come up with a very precise idea of what an astronaut needs to live on orbit.
And I understand also you have been busy sharing your sleep pattern for an experiment called circadian rhythm. What's this experiment about?
Yes, circadian rhythm is a very interesting experiment. The idea is that because on the space station we do not have a regular the alternance of night and day is not regular. It's not like on Earth where we have basically 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of night. Here on the station we have 16 cycles a day of night and day. So obviously our sleep pattern cannot be affected by those by those patterns, and we go into an artificial sleep pattern. So this study has a sensor permanently connected to me for 36 hours that measures my temperature, and the temperature is related to the activity of the body. So technically, when we're working, we have a higher temperature. When we sleep, we have a lower temperature, and by collecting this data, they are able to determine how my sleep patterns have been affected by living in an environment that is completely alien to what the normal human is supposed to be adapted to.
And what can we learn from this experiment? How can we use it on Earth?
Well, I can think of several studies where the results will be applicable. For example, there are several different kinds of areas of jobs that have a very strong impact on how a person is sleep deprived or stressed. For example, medical doctors or people that work in the police, or pilots that have to deal with jet lags and long stretches where they cannot sleep. Well, this study will allow the creation of procedures that protect these people from over fatigue and from situation where a mistake can be made that could have fatal consequences. So as you can see, the impact of this study, even though it could feel like it's a very small study, but the impact is really big.
And my last question, Luca, is we're seeing all the time kind of a ping-pong ball bouncing on a screen behind you in the middle of the Columbus laboratory. Can you tell us a bit more about what that is?
Okay, you are going to have to ask the question again, because you came in very broken.
We're seeing some kind of a ping-pong ball bouncing on a screen behind you in Columbus Laboratory. Just behind you, can you tell us a bit more what this is?
Oh, of course. You mean this screen in the background? So that machine is a sound machine. Is a ultrasound machine, a very small ultrasound machine, as big as a laptop. We use it for several experiments. Right now, today we set it up for an experiment called ocular health, where we do ultrasound of the ocular bulb to see how the lack of weight affects the shape of the eye and our vision. But we also use it for another experiment called spinal ultrasound, where we analyze the changes that the weightlessness causes on the spine. Now, this specific experiment has very important ramification on the ground, where until now, in order to diagnose a problem on the spine, we need very expensive machines like MRIs or body scans. Well, thanks to the procedure that we are developing today on the space station on the ground through remote controlling, in the future we will be able to diagnose in the very near future, we will be able to diagnose problems on the spine using just a very simple and portable ultrasound machine, just like the one you see behind me. And that is going to be very important for remote areas and places where those machines are just not available.
Thank you very much, Luca. That concludes the second portion of the event. Keep up the good work and speak to you soon.
Thank you, Jules. It was a pleasure talking to you as always, and I'll talk to you next time.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event. Thank you.
Houston Station, thank you very much for the support.
Thank you, TG1 and ESA. Station, we're now resuming operational audio communications.